All right.
All
Aha.
right. I think we're live. Um, Bang on time. I might give it a few more seconds before we sort of kick off our reward hour for April 2025. Um, Today, we're going to be focusing on the lessons that the wonderful Hannah has learned from building the comp structure at Luminovo. So we've got a lot to get through, a lot to discuss, and yeah, and I'm really looking forward to it. Um, Hannah, why don't we kick off by you introducing yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we'll sort of go through the discussion points with the
Yes.
yeah, with the audience.
Yes. So please stop me if I'm going into too much detail. But yeah, where I'm right now, I'm people lead at Luminovo, but that has not always been the case. This was also not my first role at Luminovo. And I definitely never intentionally planned to end up in HR and people. But yeah, as life turned out, I ended up studying business and management, like quite generic, but was immediately sucked into the startup bubble during my studies already, and found Luminovo actually through a startup conference that happened on our campus. And I back then registered for a workshop with Timon, one of the founders, and approached him about an internship opportunity. I was just looking for something in between my bachelor's and master's, and ended up being founder's associate to Sebastian, one of the other founders who covered everything in revenue and operations of Luminovo. That was 3 years ago, and it was immediately such a great fit that I decided not to go back to university and stay. And I kind of ping ponged around different departments back then. I did something in marketing everywhere where Sebastian kind of needed to be, but maybe couldn't be, where there was something new to build. I kind of jumped in. And that was also the case with compensation structure and performance management. And I worked with our former head of people on those things. And that was kind of my first real touch point with people and HR.
Oh
And
wow!
I really loved it. So what started as like, Hannah, please create a Google sheet with some numbers for every role we have, what we want to pay, kind of turned out into like a whole career in the end now for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was never planned, but I wouldn't do it any other way, actually.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. I love hearing about that. So, I think as you know, over the past few years, I've heard so many stories from people leaders who, well, from people leaders now who fell into a leadership role from other parts, from other organizations. Sorry, from other departments of the same organization. And I think it's a great
Mm.
model for doing really well in people because it means you understand the business more holistically rather than in
Yes.
a very narrow way. So yeah, I love that model, and you know, a huge fan of that. So
Perfect.
yeah, looking forward to hearing more about the comp project at Luminovo. Just a few hygiene factors. For those of you who it's the first time that you're joining, I'm Vaso. I'm the Chief People Officer here at Ravio. Ravio is a one tool for all, for everything to do with compensation, benchmarking, insights, all of that great stuff. And we're really excited to be doing this series over the years where we talk about all things to do with comp. Do use the little chat module. For me, it's on the right-hand side, bottom right of my screen. If you have any questions, you could either use the chat or the questions little module. If it works, I'll try and incorporate it into the conversation. Otherwise, we'll take them at the end as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm like really
so
excited for the questions. Like keep them coming.
we want all the questions. We like questions.
Great.
Um, Super. So I mean, if we kick off with this question, Hannah, for companies that lack structure and consistency, which I think is really normal for startups and scale ups, and even a little bit further along the line. What do you think are the right starting points to bring structure to compensation? Like where should we start?
Yes. Yeah, good question. I still vividly remember the chaos we had back then, or like manageable chaos. I think first of all, you should ask like, why do we want more structure right now? What's not working, and what do we want to fix? For us, it was definitely that we kind of got to 30 full-time employees, 40 in total, and had more frequent conversations about compensation. We were also constantly hiring, and every offer and every kind of review was a case-by-case decision, and it was starting to take up a lot of headspace from the founders, from the people team, from the managers involved, and also like the employees were kind of confused. So it was always this like touchy topic. So there was no cycle, and also definitely no go-to approach. And yeah, around the 30 to 40 employees mark, it kind of got tricky, and the pain was there. So try to figure out like why you want more structure. Maybe there's no pain yet and you want to be ahead of the curve. That's also really good. And if you figured out what you want to fix, then also think about kind of principles. Maybe your company already has operating principles, values, and mission, something that you stand for, and really incorporate that also in your approach. For us, it was we already had operating principles. I think we will talk about them in detail a bit later, but also the topic of transparency was very clear at Luminovo, and that we are also focused on performance. So that compensation had to be kind of tied to performance, and that we wanted transparency and clarity, and that people didn't feel anxiety about the whole compensation topic. So this kind of started the conversation. And then I would say there is a lot of info about compensation philosophies already out there, which we didn't have back then. So it took us much longer to find our own philosophy. But if I would do it today, I would probably check out collections of compensation philosophies, maybe also like Ravio's blog and so on, to get kind of an idea and then make it your own, define your own baseline. And then every business is so individual. So for us, for example, location-based pay was something that we wanted to consider in our compensation philosophy, because we had a global team from the very beginning. So our customers are also global from the very beginning. So maybe that's relevant to your company, maybe it's not. So kind of figure out which topics do we have to include. And what then was really the core of everything was that we found our leveling framework. So before you even get data from anywhere, you want to understand what is the junior level, what is professional, what is senior, and if I get data from anywhere, are we talking about the same thing, or titles might be super confusing. So we also got different examples and then kind of build our own framework on how that is aligned with, for example, benchmarking tools and so on.
Yeah.
And with the kind of philosophy, more like what do we want and why, and the structure of a leveling framework, like we have a job and there are different levels for a job. This was a good starting point to then go and build the numbers.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so I think basically what you're describing is, start early and almost start before the pain is so acute that you wish you had it yesterday. And then that will mean that you don't have to rush, that you can think, you can do the research that you described by self-serving off Ravio blog or checking out every single comp philosophy that you can find. Take your time to do the research, really think about your principles that you mentioned, really think about what what infrastructure you need there. For example, the leveling. What does P3 mean? What does P4 mean, etc. And then start marrying that up with the data. And yeah, I mean, certainly that's something that we see as well. Like, I think the earlier you're able to start, you're not going to over-engineer if you've got 5 employees, right? But I think if you're starting to think about comp structures, around the 20, 30 people mark, then you're on a good path, So yeah, even that early is really good. So how would you, what role do you think, Hannah, well, what role would you give to data, so both internal data of like the current employees at your company and external data, benchmarking data? What role do those sort of 2 different data sets bring when you're thinking about structuring compensation?
Yeah, I think first of all, it adds credibility to your whole plan of introducing a structure and communicating what this means, and also that people trust in whatever compensation package you build for them. And it also equips managers to tell a story, that I can share a lot of data. I can also make sense of it and explain it to people. And then this is then also accessible to employees, and they understand where this is coming from, and they are not just fed this like, here, take it or leave it, but actually a lot of context. So the data, was key to us having this, first of all, transparency, and also building trust in our approach. And also, like, besides talking to other people leads or experts in the rewards community, the data told a lot of stories also about how can you go about compensation. So when you see, for example, especially in sales compensation, see actual data from companies, how they combine fixed compensation, variable compensation, and so on, and then you make sense of it with how big are they, what are the average deal sizes that they have, what's the quota behind that compensation, you can actually also see the setting behind it and the strategy that they have and how that correlates to your case. So that was super important. And in the end, we talked about this briefly already. Many people say this, that compensation is this like art and science combined. Like, I think the science is a lot the data and kind of the formula of to build a compensation package, or also a structure across levelings with like range spread and so on. But then there's also like the psychological aspect or strategic aspect, like what creative choices do you want to make because you want to create a certain or get a strategic outcome, or also get buy-in from certain people. And this is then what you make with the raw data. That's kind of the art, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think, obviously, we love data and we love external data. It helps us, as you say, gain the credibility with our customers, our employees, but also with our stakeholders, whether that's an executive team, leadership team, managers, whoever that is. Good data is very difficult to argue with. So, if you're able to present a data set that is complete, that is taken from companies that we lose talent to. So, aspirational companies that we want to hire from, for example, you don't get the, oh, hey, that's not what my friend said, who, I don't know, got headhunted for this company. So I think it's, clearly like super essential to have the strong external data set there. And then the art part, as you mentioned, is around the comms. So The numbers are all there and they make sense, but are your comms clear? Are they transparent? Can everybody understand them? Can everybody access the communication around the comm philosophy and structure in like one centralized place? How does it tie up to the operating principles? All of that is the is the art bit, and yeah, and of course making use of the internal data. So any, I don't know, pay gaps that one have or any other insights that can really be very integral to build a strong employer brand where you live by what you're advocating. So yes, we're transparent, and here's how transparent. We're sharing the internal data in whatever form works for the company.
Yes.
It's a great sort of signal that that companies live by what they preach, basically.
Yeah, and making it visible, right? I think people analytics in general is a big topic, but especially when it comes to compensation information, understanding kind of where the biggest cost for a SaaS company, which is our employees, like goes, how it's distributed and allocated, and then also explaining differences. I think there's also a good question from Annika in the chat. Like, how do you then handle differences in pay that obviously will be there? And like actually having data internally to compare and understand how your total payroll is kind of made up and distributed is super important. And to also, for hiring decisions, for progression decisions. So that helps. And gender pay gap, etc. Obviously, it's really cool that we can now monitor this. And by having a leveling framework, can really get like a clean gender pay gap, basically, because we can then compare people on the same role, on the same level, do they earn the same? And then the general pay gap, obviously, across the organization.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go into this already too deeply.
We have some great questions.
Yes.
I think let's, if we take one of the questions now, because I'm just conscious of we've got a lot to
what's coming.
So Emma and Annika, we will look also at your question later. So Emma's question, we're going through leveling and benchmarking right now. I'm finding that we have some internal roles that map to the same level. For example, software engineer 2 and software engineer 3 are both a P2. I plan to build separate salary ranges for these roles, for example, 35th and 65th percentile. Do you have experience of this, and how did you manage comms with the team when explaining this overall framework?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I understand correctly, but like separate salary ranges, like we also have different salary bands, tiers, however you want to call it, for every role. So every job family kind of is its own thing. And it can be that like roles in comparing a whole job family against each other, might be some leveling discrepancy as well. Like that a level 1 product manager might not be the same level 1 as a level 1 recruiter, for example. So there's definitely a difference. But I think, I'm not sure if Emma means that if there's different pay positioning for different roles. I'm not quite sure, but this is also something that we have discussed. Kind of the market informs our salary positioning or our salaries that we pay at Luminovo. So if the market is specifically very competitive, very typical example, German-speaking sales executives. So quite a tricky role to fill at the moment, especially in SaaS. So there we might make the conscious decision to pay at like 65th percentile instead of 50th percentile, just because there we need to be a bit more competitive to get the right talent. And that's exactly how I tell it to our employees, if it is relevant, so that the market kind of defines also with the positioning that we have. But there's not like these are below market, these are top of market. It's like slight differences, I would say. I'm not sure if that answered Emma's question, I hope. it did.
Well, hopefully, I mean, Emma, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm sure Hannah would be happy
Yes.
afterwards as well. Typically, what we would do, what we would advise customers is to keep things as simple as possible. So have a, one software engineer sort of family in which there are like however many levels. We at Ravio advocate for there to be 6 IC levels, so from P1 to P6. If your software engineer 2 and software engineer 3 are both P2s, then that's okay, but I would expect the software engineer 3 to have a higher comp ratio within the P2 salary band than the software engineer 2. So for example, a software engineer 2 could be hitting like a comp ratio of say 0.95, and software engineer 3 could be hitting the comp ratio of 1.05 relative to the midpoint. Yeah. I can geek out about this for hours, but I think leave it at that. We can connect afterwards. Okay, cool.
There's already a helpful answer from someone else.
Great. I love the self-serve of the chat. But Hannah, how do you think that companies should think about total reward? Because base obviously is why we all work, and it's very important. But what about all the other elements that make up comp packages?
Yes. So first of all, I mean, total rewards is so broad, so complex, and so individual. But at Luminovo, I would say the key elements are, first of all, positive, caring, and safe, like psychologically safe work environment, which I think is a huge aspect. So basically the mental health around me, which I think is a huge reward comparing to some other companies. Big reason why I'm still at Luminovo after 3 years and will stay here for a very long time, I guess.
That's really nice.
And then kind of learning and growth opportunities, and how transparent this, like if it's a conversation that you have and you kind of have a outlook or a roadmap that you're excited about. And like we call then, we don't call it work-life balance, but integration, like how much flexibility do you have to find your productive setup. So from remote work, hybrid, on-site, different equipment needs, etc. Or even like I'm neurodiverse, so I benefit a lot from like accommodations that this job gives me, which I might not get in other companies. And then there's compensation, and compensation is then for me cash compensation, some benefits that you might not get without us as an employer, where we can give you better access. For us, this is, for example, access to one-on-one coaching and therapy, which we can give on short notice through a platform called Bloom, and where individual counseling or therapy is very hard to access as an individual. So this is something that comes into play. And then there's equity compensation, which is a big topic for us. So everyone at Luminovo gets equity, not only in some roles. And basically everyone, regardless of their level or role, is an investor in Luminovo and invested in the long-term success, not only for the time that they're at the company. So, and compensation-wise, it's like base pay, variable pay, and equity that are the main components that we're considering. Yeah, and I wouldn't, as an early stage startup, I wouldn't overthink benefits too much, to be honest. If you pay at the market or above, most benefits will be accessible to your employees, hopefully. And first, I would try to get the basics right, like base compensation, benchmarking, equity, and variable pay for some roles where it's needed. And then you can extend your total rewards over time if you think it makes sense and you have the capacity. Yeah. But I wouldn't overthink it and start to, I don't know, a dozen gym memberships and so on.
Definitely. I think not overthinking and not over-engineering compensation is really an amazing principle. And And I completely agree. Keep it as simple as possible. But I think it's also important that if you are offering benefits, to make sure that they align to the principles of the comp structure and the comp philosophy that we mentioned earlier. For example, at Ravio, we really want people to, focus on their overall well-being, not just work well-being. Because we think the two things are tied together. It sounds similar to your principles actually at Luminovo, and some of the things that we've included to sort of live by what we say is a really generous for UK standards. Parental leave policy. We want to be a great place for parents to work, and also a couple of initiatives around well-being, extra well-being days for holiday, and well-being allowances. These are just examples, but I think they're really well received because people get ties up to the overall philosophy. Well,
True. Yeah.
uh,
And they're the same as with the cash or monetary compensation. Again, it has to match your principles, your values as a company. If this is at the core of who you are as a team and who your people are, then some benefits might make more sense or more valuable, impactful than others. So that also should also inform your choices, I would say.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions, and then we also want to look at the slides,
Yes.
Hannah. Duarte, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. So the question is, can you please address local bans versus regional bans, i.e. clustering together? And I think it ties up to what Evelyn wrote earlier, which is, do you have a solution for handling global comp for remote teams? Same position, same level, same team, but different countries. So this is really important because especially in this world post-COVID, where for a lot of tech companies, we've become a lot more remote than we might have been 10 years ago. Our philosophies around how we pay geographically has never been more important. So I think you have to start with the principle. And if the principle is, for example, localized pay, i.e., you live in London, you get a London salary. You live in Nicosia, Cyprus, you get a Nicosia, Cyprus salary, which may be different to a Limassol, Cyprus salary, by the way. So are you going to go hyper localized to the city in the country, or are you going to go to tiers of countries, for example, where, I don't know, London, New York, Paris are like, say, tier 1, and then tier 2, something like Barcelona. I'm just making these up, by the way, but just so you get a sense. And then tier 3, all other. That might be the way you want to look at it. Other folks who have a lot of money might say, we're paying the HQ rate and that's it. Wherever you live, that's up to you. We don't care. That's a philosophy as well. All of these work. It doesn't matter, but you need to be sure that what you're introducing aligns to the comp philosophy that we said, but also you can keep it going for as the company scales. So it might sound like a great idea to do, we pay the HQ salaries now that we're 30 people, and then you start hitting a bigger number and you're like, wow, we got to pull that back. So it's important to think about the future, I think, when you think about the geographical pay. In terms of what the solution is for handling global comp for remote teams, obviously Ravio uses Ravio, and certainly for all the locations where we have data, which is a lot, we can create salary bands in less than 10 minutes around exactly what you describe, Evelyn. But it doesn't have to be Ravio. it's a lot harder to do on a spreadsheet, but you can do it on a spreadsheet. And there are, I'm sure other providers who also provide a great, great solution. I don't know, Hannah, if you had something to add.
Well, it's a super complex topic. I think we could do a dedicated webinar about this. But I agree with you, like there is no right or wrong approach to like global pay, local pay, anything in between. There are so many options. So I think this is also still the trickiest part for us to figure out, because we are a remote first company with a headquarter in Munich in Germany, but people in like more than 20 different locations all across the globe. So finding an approach that feels fair to everyone and also makes sense strategically for us as a company, that then also evolves with us as a company, but also the environment that we're in, is super tricky. So I would say there, the foundation is also relevant, but I think it is less, or it might evolve faster or more than like the leveling framework and overall how you structure compensation bands. But the location-based pay approach, I would say, is very much developing with you. So I'm not sure if we talk about this later when we talk about Luminovo's approach in more detail, but you can say, like we say, we pay what your talent market pays, so the talent market you're competing in. But now after COVID, is the talent market for German-speaking customer success manager that lives in Spain the Spanish geographic market, or is it still the German startup bubble that they're competing in? So this is something that is constantly, or I'm constantly reflecting on, when are the markets shifting and we have to redefine borders differently.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm actually going to take this. There's a great conversation happening in the chat channel. I think we should, and this is a note for Tabitha, my colleague who's also on this call, but I feel that localized geographical pay is a great subject that clearly there's a lot of interest in for maybe for a future one. And Eileen, totally hear you on the question around being at the top of the band. Sometimes spot bonuses, backward facing, work for the situation that you describe. But let's move on, because Hannah, I know you've got some amazing slides for us. We're going to have to be really disciplined on time. So like 3 minutes, 4 minutes each. So just a heads up that I might interrupt you. Sorry.
That's all right.
But here oh, no, sorry. I think this is the first one. Yeah.
Yes.
So so I think this is the sort of, the principles and what were the core principles that helped you structure the what you ended up building at Luminovo?
Yeah, so like all these slides were actually taken or inspired by the presentation we showed to the whole company in 2023 when we rolled out the comp structure to the whole company. We had a retreat with all the managers before that and incorporated their feedback. So, but what you're seeing is also what our employees saw. And yeah, we started with kind of recapping our operating principles, which are 2 categories, putting people first and building great things. And this kind of shows the focus on performance and impact that we want to create, but also on transparency. We also talked about this, Vaso, about treating our employees as the intelligent adults they are, right? Like they can handle complex information and make sense of it. And yeah, trusting each other and also, having fun while doing it. But that's kind of the foundation where we came from. Sorry, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And sort of, hearing anecdotally from, my girlfriends, for example, a lot of them, a couple of them work in tech and they have no idea how their pay is structured, and it really bothers them. And, I try to be helpful, but I can't if it's a sort of black hole,
Exactly.
what's the percentage well, what's the, what are they benchmarking you against? They don't have the answers to those questions. And I think it's a shame because, adults are capable of making their own decisions, but they need the tools to understand what it is that, in this case, what it is that is driving their pay. So, yeah.
And transparency is not this like wishy-washy or because you want to be nice kind of thing, but it is an efficiency driver. Like I am managing 70 employees at the moment with just 3 people in the people team, 2 full-time and like 2 others dedicating some of their time to people. I wouldn't be able to do that if I'd have to explain all of this to every individual that has a performance review and answer kind of the back and forth questions because things unclear. So having a clear approach is also a business case, right? Like managers can handle performance and compensation reviews much more independently. They might need some guidance here and there, but I'm not a gatekeeper for these processes and decisions. Same with hiring managers. So this clear approach is not just a we are so nice kind of thing. It's also
absolutely.
a business decision. Yeah.
It's about building something that also will scale, as you say.
Exactly.
Cool. And here, I think this slide is really interesting because it's sort of, and we sort of touched on it before with when we were talking about the sub levels within a specific band. Why was a levels and a sub levels approach what you ended up with at Luminovo? Like, why was it that was the most appropriate one?
Yeah. So first of all, we wanted not too bloated structure. Our hierarchy is still very flat because we are still very small. So most people are in the level 1 to level 3 range, and then some on level 4, the head offs usually, or staff level ICs. So keeping it simple on that range, and then the interns and working students are not there; they're level 0 maybe. And we then decided, okay, we don't want to have bands that are fluent, but have like one level has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're either at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end, but not in between. Because otherwise, we might still have people that are on the same level, but earn different salaries, just because they negotiated a little bit. It's 100 euros more or less. So you're clearly matched based on performance expectations and performance assessment to one level, and then the pay is a distinct package and it's not a plus minus. I love this because it's not overly complicated with like top performer multiplier or something like this, or tenure multiplier. For now, this is where we started, and it's still working out 2 years later that we have this grid of the main levels and then new, established, or advanced per level as a sub-level, essentially. And this is tied to the no negotiation approach that we have. Employees and candidates see this grid with all the numbers when we talk to them, and they know what they will earn if they progress to the next level. And then there is no discussion about it.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, though, that I think one thing that you've obviously done really well, Hannah, is really sort of go into detail around, what is expected around, scope, responsibility, impact, accountability. Like that's, having that clarity in the leveling framework, like on the left, well, my left screen is like the foundational part of why this works, because it's clear, it's concise, it makes sense. So you need to put that hard work in at the start to build this infrastructure, so that then it ties up really nicely with the clarity of the sub levels.
But it's also no longer rocket science, right? Like if you use a benchmarking tool like Ravio, you also have a leveling framework that includes some explanations. So, and there are also other companies sharing theirs, so you can already get a canvas that you then adapt to your company. And I think you can arrive at such a structure quite easily and input maybe from your people. But yeah, that's kind of the key then to get started.
Amazing. Love it. Love the clarity. Okay, and well, related to what you mentioned earlier, how does performance and progression, how is it evaluated? How is it rewarded? Obviously, you mentioned there's no negotiation, but how do you think about it?
Yes, so for us, it's always first a conversation about performance and level, and the compensation package is then just the result, the aftermath. So we have half-yearly performance reviews. So every 6 months, you have a check-in. At the half-yearly checkpoint, it's a 360. So from your peers, etc. Usually no leveling and compensation review. And during your yearly anniversary, you have a 180 feedback with your manager, and that also includes, the progression discussion and like usually an up leveling. And there might be exceptions to the norm, but that's our usual approach. And we also don't have global cycles. Your review date is set on your start date at Luminovo, so always at your anniversary. And the tricky part is then to translate this overall generic leveling framework to a specific role. This is what a manager has tried to do here with the marketing example. And I've actually now built a ChatGPT that has our leveling framework in the background, and you can feed it performance objectives for a role, and then it gives you kind of a career path, or like broken down for each role. What do you expect on this level in terms of performance? That helps a lot. But generally, it's gotten rather easy to figure out if someone is level 1, 2, or 3, like entry or beginner, professional, or senior. What is not sometimes tricky is to figure out, are they still new on the role, established, or advanced? And here on the left side, you see a bit how we think about this. So there are like 3 C's: competency, consistency, and comfort, that we analyze. And if your competency is still not super, not completely fulfilling the role yet, you might still be at new. If you're already performing like some level 3 markers, then you might be advanced on your way to level 3. Then you're at the level 2 advanced stage. So these are helping us for self-reflection, so the employees also fill that out, but also for manager and peers to assess if someone has progressed on their level or is ready also to jump to the next one.
Yeah. And I totally hear you on it gets easier to ascertain where folks, so whether it's in which level or where within the level do they sit. So it's kind of like a muscle that you sort of keep getting, becoming stronger and stronger. And so the more you do it, the easier it gets, especially for new managers. It can be quite intimidating, but it's something you gotta just work on. I would also add that I find when you're doing the 360 reviews, in our case, we do 360 reviews, a deep dive once a year, and that's followed by a calibration process with like all the managers, all the leaders. Scaled, but that's the process that we follow. And we do get on calibration meetings, we've got better at doing them over time. I have got better at hosting them over time. I've made many mistakes there. But I have noticed we've become a lot sharper in the discussions that we have, and in holding leaders and managers holding each other accountable for why they think that person is, at that level or at this place within the level. So so a lot of value in the calibrations, even though they, are very, very long and take a long.
Yeah. And I would say this is one more reason to start as early as possible with this, because then your managers and your people have a chance to grow up with this structure, and the structure also to evolve over time. It's much harder to introduce this to a bigger organization where everyone that is new to it. So
exactly,
I see a lot of benefit from it.
So looking at the base salary structure, we've already covered that there's no negotiation at Luminovo, but it would be interesting to look at the location-based cost of labor multiplier, which relates to one of the questions we had earlier. How did you think about this, and well, does it work? Are you happy with it? What feedback have you got?
Yeah. So at the moment, we look at the job family, we benchmark it for Germany, and then we have one multiplier for a country that's then applied to every job family. So whether you are software engineer or a seller, you have the same location multiplier for your country. It's per country, not per city, so we're not as granular there. And for now, I'm really happy with this approach, but there's a but. But first of all, why? There's always a but. Because it also allowed us to make some experiments with like hiring somewhere that's not close to our headquarters, where we don't see those people every day. Also because it was financially attractive for us. So I think we wouldn't be able to afford the headcount we have at the moment if everyone would be in the most expensive city in Germany right now. That's just true. I will not sugarcoat it. Yeah. So it was also a budget decision, right? Like we can hire more people, talented people that are still compensated fairly, like given where they work and live and their like next best alternative, right? That's important. What you could now do is also start benchmarking every role in every country. So, for example, the talent market for customer success in Spain might be much more competitive than it is for a software engineer, for example. But if you apply the same location multiplier, you might not be picking up on this. So that's a flaw in our current system that I'm thinking about. It hasn't kind of become a real life problem yet, but I assume it might. And also this approach of like national borders, it makes sense a lot because, social security costs and taxation systems are tied to geographic borders, right? And this is then in total employer cost or like how much net you're taking home from your gross salary. All this is kind of reflected in the market rate that we are benchmarking, but there is of course no perfect approach. So we'll be constantly evolving. But for now, it's one location multiplier determined by overall market rate, overall for startups in Germany versus in the other country, that is then applied to the benchmarked salary in Germany.
Yeah. Okay, got it. But definitely agree with the evolution of everything that we roll out. Important we stay close to it.
And those multipliers are also shared with employees, so they know what the location multiplier is for their country. And if they have questions, I've had chats where I showed them more background data if they needed to make sense of what they saw there.
Yes.
Because if you don't, then people again don't know what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. We have a question from Jenya. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. What do you consider as promotion? Is it a pass from L1 or from L1 to L2 or from 1.1 to 1.2, etc.?
Good question. I mean, also is there right or wrong? No, probably not. But what we celebrate as promotions is like from full level to the next level. And the other is kind of progression, sub-level progression. That still we decided to give a shout out for, but like officially promotions are like when you jump to completely new responsibility level or scope level. Yeah.
Okay, so the big promotion is from level to level, but there's sort of these mini celebrations or mini promos from 2.1, 2.2, 2.3.
Yeah. And it's very rare that one jumps like an entire level within a year, right? Like usually we would say our company grows, we want our people to grow. So like a sub level per year is kind of like the baseline that I would like to see from every employee. But it's also possible to jump 2 in a year or maybe have another sub-level jump after 6 months already. It's possible. Just always depends on the actual performance.
Okay, great. Oh, and here we wanted to
Yes,
cover yes, total comp, and we've got to be fast, Hannah. But
would
yeah,
be.
how do you think about total comp?
Yeah. So, I mean, you probably know, but as you know your data in Ravio, but space salary benchmarks, the data quality is just much better. So we always start there. I benchmark base salaries, and then we've researched best practices on how to structure equity compensation or variable incentives on top of base salary. So this is always where I start from. And I'm really excited that in Ravio there's more total compensation data by now, like on how much OTI is usually given or equity for a role. It helps a lot, and I've found the numbers actually to be quite accurate.
Mhm.
So I'm excited for more on this, or even benefits benchmarking at some point. But yeah, and equity, as I said, is a given. It's always a percentage of the base salary for your 4-year vesting package, essentially. And the more senior you are, the more percentage of your base salary you also get on top in equity. And yeah, there are different equity grants. So in the beginning, you get a hiring grant that runs 4 years. With every promotion, when your base salary increases, of course, 20% of a higher base salary means more equity. You get a top-up grant. And for our Lumidinos, how we call them, that have fully vested their first hiring grant, they also get a refill.
Uh-huh.
And the fully vested equity is kind of set to zero, like it's locked in, not part of their ongoing compensation anymore. There's nothing paid out to them monthly. So that's past compensation that they've already earned.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
how do you think about, once the first hire grant is fully vested, how would you think about the, I guess, retention grant,
Yeah.
or like relative to the base salary?
Yeah. We always say that every promotion or up leveling is like a hiring or rehiring. So the person would then receive a new grant that's aligned with our market benchmarks at the time, what we would offer someone new that's coming in. Because
Yes,
like historically, they will already have much more equity because they
yes.
joined much earlier and already multiplied the equity value in the meantime
That
multiple
was the
times.
risk by joining.
Exactly. By joining earlier and then probably over time, overall equity packages might be a bit smaller. But
Yes,
let's say someone had like 100% equity compensation, like same as base salary was the same in equity on top. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will have the same money value again, but like they're
yes,
somewhat,
yeah,
we would pay a new person. Yeah. This
yes.
is
Got
also then clear to people, so then there is no like, no.
There's no noise. Great. Yeah, that's the model that I've used in the past as well, and it's worked for me. It makes sense, right? And it's logic driven, which
Yes.
is helpful. Okay, and final slide, and then we've got a tiny bit of time for questions as well. But yeah, how did you go about rolling out this new structure? Because there's a lot there. Like there's a lot that you've introduced, and you should be really proud of it.
Thank
Um,
you.
how did you? Yeah, I imagine it was a lot to sort of unveil. How did you go about that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it was a first like kind of a focus group of the founders, head of finance, head of people, and me back then. Then I took over the people domain, but before that we had a manager retreat, aligning all the managers first, getting their
Yes.
buy-in, incorporating their feedback, and then it was this company offsite where we presented it. And I was quite nervous, to be honest, because first of all, I was standing there in front of 60 people and I was convinced, but I had still had to convince them. But I was surprised that there were very little critical questions because we were able to tell a story and get buy-in also on like the benchmarking tools we use, which other companies are using these tools, whose data do we have access to, who do we want to compete with, and why did we choose this approach. So after sharing all this and then like having a dialogue about this, there was very little like pushback, and I expected our very critical employees, because we have a very open discussion culture, which is I love.
Great. Yeah.
Um, like I expected there to be more like questioning and like, but in the end it was much appreciated. And so by now it's kind of like a running system. Of course, sometimes you need to give a bit more guidance again, but because we also talk to candidates about this, they already enter Luminovo with all the background. So in the candidate handbook, there is the performance and leveling and progression information. They see the leveling framework with all the descriptions already before they join. It's also then used for the offer conversation, because we first talk about, do we agree on the performance level that we would put you on? And then the compensation is kind of set already, so there's no surprise basically. And I also share the compensation bands with them in the first call. They can also take a screenshot if they want. But the same way that our employees know the whole comp structure for their role, there was also, I think, a question in the chat. They also only know for their role and for their directs if they have employees in the team. They always know what's in front of them, like where can I grow, where should I be currently compensated, and this is also what we share. We don't share individual salaries, and also why would you need to know what another person is like or another role is earning? If you want to know, you can ask. People can talk to each other if they want to, but I don't by default distract people with this info.
Agreed. So I think, Hannah, basically, it sounds like you were very well prepared, and that was why you were able to get ahead of any raised eyebrows and difficult and awkward questions. So well done. That's not easy. I think okay, I can get rid of the thing. But yeah, to Lisanne's question, how do you look at only making this transparent for managers and the management team and not communicating the numbers per level to the employees? I mean, in our case, Hannah, so internally at Ravio, for now, we're sharing, so everybody would know their own band, and therefore where they sit within the band. At some point, we're still a small company. At some point, I hope to have all the salary bands public, at least public internally. But I don't really see why there's any need to, I don't believe that, Vaso's salary should be available to everybody at Ravio or elsewhere. So I'm not a fan of that. But, again, it depends on the comp philosophy. I don't know, Hannah, if you wanted to add anything.
I always say, like, there might be reasons, your employees best and what information they're craving or when they're overwhelmed with information. But generally, I think if you are confident about your approach and you have answered all the why questions and how and so on, then personally, I just think there's no reason to keep information like that is relevant to an employee. So I think where you are right now and where you can go, that's the kind of information that someone's interested in. And if you're able to share that and just add clarity, I think you should do it or consider doing it. Of course, understanding your unique employees and situation. But generally, that's always if we are sure about this, why are we keeping it a secret? That's how I always challenge our company and ourselves.
That's a good sort of litmus test, I think. I think Jenya's question can be answered really quickly. So, which is, can team members grow 20% in salary in the same level if they go from 1.1 to 1.3?
So I think this is then called like the range spread. Usually, I think this is between 5 and 8% for our benchmark for our salary bands. So from level 1.1 to 1.2, it would be 5 to 8%, and then in total, it's like a wider range. So yes, and in relative terms, the range of a level kind of stays the same, but of course, the bigger the salary, the bigger the range is also in absolute numbers. So it's kind of like a funnel. Level 1 is like narrower than the level 3, and then also the expectations from one sub-level to the next also get bigger. It's not just the money distance that's bigger, also the performance expectations for a senior employee get bigger over time.
Yes, definitely. And then just aware of time, but I think very quickly we can get to Michelle's pretty complex question. But how do you recommend we manage creating a compensation policy when the budget in the company is limited, and specifically in a startup? My answer to this, Michelle, is that, look, I really empathize. It's really hard. But the comp philosophy and the comp policy can be, it can, you should communicate what it is or what you want it to be. And you can also communicate at the same time that, look, due to the macro conditions, right now, we can't action the, let's say, 10% promotion from one level to the next. It's okay to say that, because your philosophy is stays at one point in time, and sometimes there will be these external factors that mean that we're a tiny company, we can't right now pay the aspirational FANG salaries that we want to pay. Anything for you? Sorry, we're 1 minute over. Sorry, everyone.
No, but I think that's a good closing. Like we also said, this is all under the assumption that we have the funds and the financial flexibility to make it work if the situations demand the budget to be tighter. That might affect salary reviews, etc. But because everyone has equity compensation, this should then also be in the interest of the stakeholders, of the investors, that the people are as well, right? Like if we are would be tight on cash, that our valuation or even future of the company would suffer, and then they suffer as well. So maybe it's best to make the belt a bit tighter for a little while. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, that's all we have time for now. Thank you to the audience. You've been really amazing. We missed Annika's question right at the start, but I will go back to it. Sorry.
Yes. I messaged you.
An amazing guest. Thank you so much. This session has been recorded. We'll follow up. And yeah, see you at the next one. Hannah, thanks again. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.